Oh, well, good morning, good evening, everybody, wherever you're listening from. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for another session of Tapped In with my amazing colleague, Michael. Um, it's great to have this chat this morning. We are talking to Bronwyn Millar. She's an author, an artist, a kinesiologist, a teacher, a speaker, a facilitator. And today she's here to talk to us about those things as well, but she's specifically going to be speaking to us about the goddesses. And if you're curious what that means, stay tuned, you're going to find out. Hi, Bronwyn. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Angelique. Thank you. Thanks, Michael, for this exciting opportunity.
Yeah, nice to meet you, bro. And I'm really excited about this one because, like the bigger picture of things, we're really moving away from masculine energies that have sort of built the world until now. The roads, the science, they fought the wars, all that, and now it's such a mess. So now we're seeing, and we have for a while, really. We're seeing the rise of the divine feminine everywhere, like in our businesses, in our schools, in our parliaments, even in some cases. So yeah, no, I'm really excited to learn more about the goddess power and qualities today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a really wild ride the last couple of thousand years. I feel like we've been in a sterility cult. When people talk about the old religions, they'll find figurines with penises, and in Ireland they've got the Sheelinigies, which have their legs open and actually splay their vulvas open. And this was how things were because reproduction is actually how we all get here. It's the most magical thing that we do. And what they've done is tone down as much as they can on the sexuality and only focused on male sexuality and women and the female sexuality and female pleasure and anything to do with female empowerment has been kind of trodden on, and they've put us in what I call a sterility cult for the last 2,000 years. So I'm
Yeah.
very happy that we're coming out of that, and women for the first time in thousands of years are being given the opportunity to actually um, speak about who they are and what they want. It's definitely a beautiful time to be alive for women.
I can't agree more. I wish it was everywhere, and like all together at the same time, but we're slowly getting there, so I can live with that.
So I was speaking last night to somebody about the war in Iran. I don't ever support war. I'm not supporting war at all. But what I'm saying is that was a feminist uprising. That was one of the first times a feminist uprising has caused a war. And that's really powerful. Despite the fact that it's a war and it's potentially going to do terrible things, it is going to do terrible things. It was started by women ripping off their hijabs. And it's time.
Wow, really? I didn't really look at it that way. Could you
There was
elaborate
a
on that? How?
There was a young girl who was beaten to death for pulling her hijab off by the religious police, and that was what started it. It started protests. They sparked across all the universities in
Yeah,
Iran, and it was really young women pulling off their hijabs that started this. So it's just another sign for me that the divine feminine has had enough. We've had enough of being hidden away.
yeah, yeah. That's the earlier uprising there. I totally agree with that. I do see it, like here in Australia. I see it everywhere. Like women are just ahead of men. That's just how it is. Like they get better jobs than men these days. They're just more aware. They're way more aware. Like in the work that we've been involved with, which sort of involves things like doing soul readings, like to help people explore their soul, so to get out of their ego head and to get more heart centered, and to start sort of working on organizations to become more heart centered and not sort of follow the masculine sort of ego slash agency of sort of submissiveness to a higher goal. That's sort of really happening here. Like I'm meeting women all the time that ask to do readings, and then we just connect better. There's much more co-creation happening. Female groups are much more sort in this area where I'm at, sort of north of Brisbane, which is outside of a city area, I couldn't tell you the amount of groups of feminine leaders getting together, all heart centered, and I think it's interesting because it's really authentic, but it's still quite a big gap to what most of organized society is. And I think what Angelique and I have been trying to sort of bring together is to bring all those people together and really work towards, um, being able to help people find. Initially, it was sort of around employment and around their careers, to rise above sort of the materialist sort of view of society, and move more to more a heart centered view, or a spiritual view in five dimensions. And and yeah, but everywhere we look, we sort of get more reinforcement to sort of say, yeah, that's really where the world is going now. We've had enough of these wars. Um, War is arguably is the worst form of conflict resolution, right? So
Absolutely.
we have the ability to just diplomatically start, connecting and co-creating, but it does mean we have to question our long-held belief systems. And what unfortunately, there's still a lot of people that are not ready to start doing that yet. So the suffering is not bad enough, apparently, probably at the individual level. But what we're seeing on our screens is, everything is sort of collapsing, right? Whether you look at what's happening in Iran at the moment and how it's connected to the disclosures around the Epstein files and the hidden agendas, it's just incredible.
Mm. The crazy time to be alive. I mean, Terence McKenna speaks about the transcendental object at the end of time and how everything's just going to get, the mushroom said, everything's just going to get crazier and crazier until we're all talking about how crazy it is. I think we're there. It
Yeah.
really feels like now. I was, I'm not, I just watched clips of a Sean Ryan podcast yesterday with a Catholic priest, and he was talking about how all of the all of the boxes in the Book of Revelations are being ticked. It's just a really wild time, and for me, it's going to be scary, obviously. But people are scared of the word apocalypse, but all it means is a new knowledge.
Yeah,
So a new knowledge is coming in, and the
yeah,
old paradigm has to fall down for a new paradigm to be built. And in the divine feminine, women are collaborative. Men tend to strive for their own power and their own, for their own advancement, whereas women will strive for advancement as a collective. And that's really where what the age of Aquarius is about. I mean, it's all about collaboration and community. So it's beautiful. It's scary. Like all endings are scary, but it's a beginning too.
I think it's just exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't particularly think it's scary.
It
It's
looks scary.
Yeah, I think so. I can totally understand why many people would perceive it as scary.
Hmm.
Um, but fear really is the driving force of the masculine sort of dominance hierarchies. Because in a hierarchy, it's organized by levels where the leaders are traditionally at the top. And so intrinsically, it's driven by division between the top and the bottom. And therefore, it's by definition also fear based, because nobody wants to be the loser at the bottom. But even the people at the top, they don't want to lose their privileged positions. So essentially, what you have in those kind of structures, is that everybody's, to a degree, driven by fear. And it's very primitive, because that's sort of how gorillas and crocodiles organize in their families and in their communities. But
I feel
we do it in our companies, we do it in our governments, we even do it in our bridge clubs. Like if you go to your local bridge club or a dancing community, you'll always find one or two people that want to, make the rules, and they want to be the president. you know? And
dominate.
intrinsically, they typically have psychopathic and narcissistic tendencies, and they're very charming often as well to
Hmm.
masquerade those. So, and I think that's where once you see through that, they really can't touch you. It's like almost like a spiritual. divine protection that you put on that armor and sort of laugh at it. And there's nothing they can do because they can't sort of defend their positions. And I think what we're seeing now is, as a society, for a while we've been used to sharing systems on an equal footing. So if you think of things like Airbnb or Uber, I always mention those, but there's many more where peer-to-peer networks work just as well, and they're organized around a central theme. So I can't wait for the divine feminine to rise more and build us more of those systems.
So interestingly, my husband and I and some partners of his called AfriFungi, we've been working together for a while, and we've fascinated by mushrooms and mycelial networks. My other passion is mushroom foraging. I love eating foraged mushrooms and culinary mushrooms. I don't wander around the forest eating trippy mushrooms. Well, not always. And we organized a group of scientists, regenerative farmers, healers, and chefs from all over Joburg to create a node because we want to create a mushroom festival for Gauteng, for our part of the world, which is quite dry. I mean, Angelique will tell you we don't have a lot of mushrooms here, but we need a mushroom network here. And it was a room full of professors and writers and people that were scientists. It was fantastic. And they said, well, what is the agenda here? I said, well, we don't have an agenda. We're creating a node, and the mushroom will tell us what it wants. And everybody was amazed by it. And they came for 2 days. We had 30 people, and they were fascinated by it because they all said, we've never been invited into a network that isn't hierarchical. And we said, well, the future is not hierarchical. That's why we did it that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's excellent. So, Bronwyn, where do you want to start talking to us about the goddesses and your experience with them? Where do you want to start?
Okay, so the origin story probably. So I've got I don't know if it's mirrored. It possibly is. Can
No,
you
it's
read it?
fine.
Perfect.
Elemental Goddess Oracle is my deck of oracle cards. I'm going to just show you a couple of pictures. Ooh, I'm going the wrong way because I'm mirrored. And so these goddesses, I was a grumpy atheist. I studied I studied kinesiology, and I worked very heavily. I'll do a few more in a minute. I worked very heavily with muscles, bones, joints, diet. It was all supplements, and I thought it was all the science. I was all like, even though I was traditionally herbalist and anti-vaccine, that's because the science shows me that chemicals are bad for you. But I wasn't into the woo side of energetic healing, and I started teaching energetic healing, and I was still believing that this was kind of a placebo. So I was doing all the physical work on muscles and acupoints because I believed in those, but I really didn't believe that there was a, a real god, a real goddess. And then in 2019, my husband and I went away for a weekend and we took mushrooms, mostly for just for giggles, but also because I'd heard that it helped with anxiety, which I
Mm.
struggled with immensely. And accidentally, I took 7 grams instead of 5, and really went on a trip. So, just a little bit of my background: I had sexual trauma when I was very young, and it gave me sexual dysfunction right through my life. And in fact, for many periods of my life, I've been completely anorgasmic, which means unable to achieve orgasm at all. There was a period of about 5 years where I didn't have an orgasm, not without trying, but because I just had all this trauma and I couldn't relax. And eventually, with kinesiology, which is why I love it so much, it really started helping me with that. And then my husband and I really broke through, and things were happening, but it wasn't a normal thing for me, and it was still very difficult. So we had this mushroom trip, and on the way up, these 7 grams, we had sex, and I had this mind-blowing orgasm. Then, then for 7 hours, I didn't enjoy myself at all. I just wanted to crawl out of my skin, and I went through quite deep trauma. So we understand this is the yin process of mushrooms. They take you into that darkness. They take you into the yin, and you've got to process your trauma. But I didn't realize this because I thought we were going to be running around giggling and seeing gnomes. And then the other side, when I was finally coming down and relieved that I was coming down, everything was okay. We had sex again, and I had another amazing orgasm. So I'm not oversharing about the orgasms because what then happened after that was I had an artifact from that trip, which persists to this day. I had one last night. I have psychic and psychedelic orgasms, and all the time, and I'm multiple orgasmic, and I have sex almost every time we have any kind of sex. So I have an orgasm every time we have a sexual encounter, which, when you think about the years of just dry, nothing, no excitement, not really. I mean, I wanted it because I wanted that release. Orgasm is a release for us. It's serotonin, it's dopamine, it's also the love hormones. It's everything you need to really bond with your partner. That's part of my soulmate relationship with my husband now, is we've had these incredible experiences over the last 6 years. Anyway, and so I thought I was going mad. We just immigrated to Ireland. Just after the trip, we immigrated to Ireland. I really thought I was going mad. It was 2020, and then the world starts to end, and I just lost it. And then these goddesses started emerging, and I started drawing them. And I didn't know what I was drawing until I had about 3 or 4. I'm going to see if I can find Medusa. And then I started realizing that this was something else. And with these psychic dreams, these psychic orgasms I was having, I was going into black holes and out of white holes. I was going into the cells of my body, into the atoms of my body. I had one powerful experience where I went into my intestines and I had a poogasm. So that sounds like a really strange thing to happen. I fell in love with my own shit, with the inside of the body, with every single cell in my body, and I realized, oh my goddess, this is not waste. This is something that has served me and is passing through my system, and I need to love it because it's part of me right now. So, like, and it's just been absolutely wild. So this was the first goddess who emerged. So I call her the goddess of the loving eye. She's a Medusa, and you see that she has an eye on the third eye open and her earthly eyes closed. And so we get told Medusa is this terrible Gorgon who hated men and loved killing them. Medusa was the first Me Too. Medusa was being harassed so much that Athena brought her into the temple to try and protect her, and she was supposed to be celibate. But she was raped by Poseidon in the temple. So not even that was enough to save her. And she became a Gorgon, and she could fight back for the first time she had a weapon. But I saw her, and I saw her with her earthly eyes closed and her third eye open, and I said, you need to look at yourself again with love, and you need to look at others with love. And so that was my first goddess. And so I started drawing them. They ended up, because my training is in the 5 elements in kinesiology, they were drawn in 5 elements, the Chinese 5 elements, plus the Western elements, the 4 elements as well. So they'll have an aspect of each. And it took me, I think, 4 years to find a publisher, but I finally did. The best esoteric press in the world. It's Bear & Company, Inner Traditions, which is amazing. And then in 2023, I had a Kundalini rising experience in the bath, where I was able to transfer my ability to have the psychic and psychedelic orgasms, because as amazing as they are, it's not something that I could channel. It's something I could only do in the darkness, and I would lose most of what was coming in. So I would, after the orgasm, I'd lie there and tell my husband what was going on. I mean, some of the experiences were really insane. One of the most profound was going into the mind of a millions of years old goddess who is an entity. I mean, I call them goddesses. They're female entities. They're all feminine entities, who was millions and millions of years old, and she was half reptilian and half insect. And I just floated through her mind, and I could see her, Predator with the sort of red lucky things, something like that. I could see that that's what she looked like, sort of. And she just regarded me with absolute impassion, just looked at me as though I was just a speck of dust coming through her mind, but she let me in there. Anyway, so I was able to transfer the experiences during this Kundalini rising experience that I had. I then was able to have the experiences spontaneously and bring them on. So I've created a whole set of rituals. I ring bells, I have my crystals, and my crystals pretty much go with me almost everywhere I go now. And as I get a new one, it goes in the bowl. And they communicate with me. I scry. I scry now. And it's so funny because 6 years ago I would have laughed at me. But I now scry and I see things. I ring bells. I use essences. I don't know if you noticed that I always have essences with me. I'm sniffing my essences all the time because they're pure things that bring me back into contact with the pure essence of self. Anyway, so afterwards I started a new set of goddesses. I'd received some training in kinesiology and the chakras. Kinesiology focuses much more on Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. So it's meridians, meridians, meridians. We get very little chakra training. There's one little unit and it's very, very shallow. But I got during this Kundalini rising experience an instant understanding of the chakra system as a technology, as a spiritual technology, and how to connect those. I see how that energy goes up your body at a caducus. In the double helix DNA spiral, it spirals up through your chakras. It doesn't just rise up in a straight line, and it doesn't just go up. The yang energy goes up because it's also a yin and a yang polarity. So the yang energy rises, and that's the healing energy. But the yin energy cycles down. The yin energy cycles down. So in the yin yang, in those pulls, those are where the yin comes back down through the body to the root. So what will happen is you'll have healing, let's say, from the root up through all the chakras, and it expands as it goes. The yin comes down and it contracts as it goes, all the way down to the root, and it brings trauma and messages that need to, and lessons that need to be learned through. Trauma is not a bad thing. Pain is not a bad thing. This is essential for this material plane. Anyway, and so these goddesses started emerging. So this one is actually Mary Magdalene. I didn't realize she was Mary Magdalene when I drew her. I only realized much later when I was watching a podcast on Mary Magdalene. And you'll see that they are of different traditions. This one looks like she's like from India. She's a hermit in a cave. And so and they all connect two chakras. Each of them have two chakra points. So this is connecting, this is purples and greens. So you can see it's connecting the brow to the heart. And so it's a whole spiritual technology that downloads. And I have these like really crazy downloads about 0 point energy, about the yin and the yang all the time. And so about 2 weeks ago, a friend of mine invited me onto a podcast, and she mentioned the guy's name, and I hadn't really heard of him. And I quickly Googled him, and I watched a couple of quite obscure videos, and I just thought. And then when he came on, it was William Brown, who's a biophysicist, and he worked with Nassim Haramein. And we had this amazing conversation about 0 point energy and the yin yang, which is my download, and that's everything Nassim Haramein does. And I've rewatched the podcast. I've got a tab open. I've rewatched the podcast 5 times because I'm just getting wild downloads since then.
Amazing.
That's incredible. So, Bronwyn, to which degree, I'm interested in the what you mentioned about the mushrooms. To which degree do you continue using those, or were they more like a gateway to your opening up? Because I've sort of recently looked into those. There's a psilocybin, I think it is, and because there are so many people that are on antidepressants and on sort of mood stabilizers, they're suffering from depression. And again, look, I'm from Amsterdam, but I never did any drugs really. But the mushroom business was thriving when I left, like 25 years ago. And now I'm actually, when I looked into it recently, I found that Australia is actually quite advanced in legalizing and normalizing magic mushrooms as a cure to treat people with mental health. And there's plenty of those people around. And then the connection you made to the orgasms and the sexuality, I think that's fascinating as well because society has really completely screwed that part up, right? I mean, if you look now, it's all the materialistic, sort of the physical aspects of sexuality are being promoted. You get women that are sexualizing themselves on platforms, and the men that pay money, like it's the oldest profession in a way now, amplified with technology, with the web. But what's gone missing is sacred sexuality and sacred intimacy, and I think that's where we haven't been educated on any of that. And once you've sort of experienced that, you realize that, hey, there's so much suffering out there where people aren't really aware that what's possible.
Yeah, the sacred sexuality is there's a resurgence of it, and I think people are starting to realize that what we get shown, and what sex on TV and in movies, you meet somebody 30 seconds later, you're having sex with them. It's this bizarre push to over sexualize very quickly and not develop any intimacy. Yeah, it's all based around the male orgasm. So that's really how we've built sex and sexuality. Well, we haven't built it, but how the church and how men have built it in a patriarchal society. So we're only here on this earth because of trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of orgasms. Without orgasm, we would not
Yeah,
exist. We don't speak about orgasms. And when
yeah,
we do speak about orgasms, it's the male orgasm, because the male orgasm is the biological imperative for reproduction. So without the male orgasm, we wouldn't be here.
yeah.
So it has to happen for procreation. I posit that a world where female orgasm was as important as male orgasm would create a sacred intimacy. You can't have, I mean, and I'm sure Angelique will tell you, you can't really have an orgasm with a man if you don't feel safe, loved, trusted, nurtured, and seen.
Yeah.
Agree.
And so that's really, so if you're having lots of, if the world is having lots of sex, and women are having lots of orgasms, that means women are feeling safe and seen and trusted and loved and secure and intimate. Imagine a world where we were all coming out of this, where we were growing up with two parents that adored and loved each other, and where they were prioritizing each other's needs on every level. Just on a purely scientific level, we would know that that would be a safer world, because children would be growing up in loving homes.
And that has become so rare now, hasn't it? Like I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but here in Australia, it's like an epidemic of everybody wanting to be alone. It's like, we have a housing crisis just because everybody needs a home of their own. Nobody wants to live together anymore, and it's by design. Like I think we might as well say it, the Jews, the controllers. So the people that are the true Semites are wonderful people, but it's been all confused. So now we've got, and these wars are now finally exposing you know, the masculine control hierarchies for what they are through the Epstein files, which everything is connected with. But now we're starting to see what's actually going on, and yeah, there's really an epidemic of people living alone, and also almost glorifying it. Like, I'm one in a way. Like my last relationship was 2 years ago, and I've been living in solitude. I quite enjoyed it, but it's not a long-term solution, I don't think, for anyone, and certainly not for the idea of procreation. And in a way, society has really gotten us off the path and made us forget that the only way to arrive on this planet in this sort of materialistic human form is through a mother and a father, and that we embody both masculine and feminine qualities, whereas society is sort of driving us to be masculine because it's all about money, it's all about control. It has been, and we're waking up to that. And unfortunately, a lot of even in a lot of women have actually now. There's a lot of movement here on getting women into leadership, but almost in the wrong way because they're going into like government leadership structures, which are very masculine. So it's not the gender problem; it's more the structure problem that we've built these hierarchies. So the more we go and equalize it, and become one and start sharing our experiences, including sexual ones, I think the world will be better for it. And hopefully, the younger generation starts seeing through that. There's really no joy in a career to accept less than you're capable of.
I think it's just the control system has always wanted to mess with family, and the control system messed with women first. So you
Mm.
mess with the mothers for thousands of years. You
Yeah, yeah,
subjugate and humanize mothers, and now that women know that we have rights and we have the vote and we're able to actually rise a bit, Now it's messing with children. So they're messing with children on their screens. They're introducing confusing sexuality in schools. They're pushing like stuff through the phones that is crazy. I don't know if you've known
Yeah.
about this mad Roblox thing where the people that design Roblox are grooming children and they're
Yeah.
pedophiles.
Yeah.
People that design the games.
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, these things are falling away. Mentioning the Jews. My husband's Jewish, and I've got a lot of there's a lot of crossover in our family, and Jews are not a monolith. In fact,
Yeah.
the opposite is true. There's the Mossad, and the Mossad is very much aligned with this
Yeah.
Armageddon narrative that's being played out underneath everything at the moment. Bibi Netanyahu is desperately trying to about the coming of the second Messiah. He was told by a rabbi 30 years ago, "You will be the one to hand the keys to Jerusalem to the Messiah." So this is
Yeah.
it's a religious thing, but it's underneath. It's underneath everything. It's the Jesuits. It's the
Yeah.
Catholic Church, the Jews, it's MI5, it's the CIA. All of it is the same. It's the same thing at the root of
Yeah.
it. It's a dragon with many heads.
Yeah. We're starting. I think we're starting to see through it. So we're starting to see that we have all these belief systems that are sort of they've been introduced a number of thousand years ago, i.e.,
Yeah.
not that long ago, and they've all been infighting, but they all came from Persia originally, and so and it's great. I think that's what's happening now is that the removal of the hierarchy and the constraints that we've sort of been programmed into. Because if you really believe in a supernatural sort of one being that governs it all, then what are the points of having all these divisions and these borders? We're all made in their image, so then we sort of really get along. And I think through this process, evil is essentially exposing itself. And unfortunately, Israel was created by bankers essentially, and then under that agenda, they've sort of used what happened in the Holocaust as almost an excuse to do all sorts of things. And now we're starting to see through it all and say, hey, that's not really. We got to move away from those sort of kind of systems. And I think people are starting to, yeah, fatigue with not just with war, but also with the governments that are sort of not really telling the truth. You see it with the Epstein file, you see it everywhere. But really, it's been affecting our children. And if it's really the worst to sort of imagine a young child now, growing up in a world where all they really have is screens to get their information. Their parents are too busy, so they don't get an education there necessarily. And I'm talking about the West mainly. But we
Yeah.
have access to this incredible technology. Like what we're doing is, and I love that you brought up zero point energy because that's one of our pillars is to really start demanding disclosure from our authorities at a very local level and pointing them to where that originates. So, with the emergence of us all realizing that, hey, our corporations, particularly Boeing and Lockheed Martin, have had access to zero point energy for decades and have been gatekeeping it from us, and they're making us
Mm-hmm.
pay taxes to access electricity through the wall and through an old sort of centralized system. So now that we're sort of seeing that, hey, this is actually available, we can have real Teslas that we don't have to charge anymore, and we don't have to charge our phones. We have that technology. This will become a thing of the future, and that then leads to unlimited clean, pure water. And already, I did a search the other day on you know preventative health or wellness companies, and it's just incredible. There's like tens and tens of companies that are investing in machines to promote longevity and essentially immortality. And now that we're starting to see that, hey, this is actually in the realm of what's possible with the help of technology if we organized in a benevolent way around it, then we can also adapt our social structures to fit that narrative. And the world's big enough, but there's just so much work that needs to be done to move into this heart-centered new earth. Um, And I
I
think you're,
must say, yeah.
yeah. Now, the topic that you're all about is that the rise of the divine feminine, the goddesses, and to sort of embody sacred intimacy, healthy sexuality, and equality is an extremely noble cause. And I think a huge growth market in many parts of the world still.
Yeah, it's everybody's interested in the divine feminine. I mean, it's our time, the age of Aquarius. Despite Aquarius is the divine feminine. It's really. I had a beautiful. I love Kali. I mean, we're coming out of the Kali Yuga. I'm a big Kali fan. I've got these little Kali goddess essences, and I'll often take a few drops of Kali because she brings me back. She brings me back into yin and yang, because Kali is birth and death. So you spoke a little bit about immortality, and I struggle with that. I don't want to live in a world where humans have the potential to live unnatural lifetimes, because death is part of life. And I do understand that potentially our telomeres have been shortened. I know our telomeres have been shortened. We potentially should have a lifetime of about 200 years.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the natural human lifespan. If that's the case, then I'm okay with that. But extending life on this planet indefinitely, why are you doing that? Because we're supposed to die. We're supposed to be born and we're supposed to die. And Kali shows me that. So I took 2 drops of Kali last night and I had a bath. And immediately she was dancing. That CERN statue where she's in the middle of the CERN statue. That was the
Yeah.
first place I went to, which is unusual. And I saw her dancing within that statue, dancing the dance of death, because that's why CERN has her there. CERN has her there as a symbol of death. And then she danced out of the circle and she lay down in front of me, and then she lay down, she lay down and then she turned around and merged with me, and my legs came up spontaneously and we both started birthing blue bodies, because Kali is death and she's also birth. So when you die,
Yeah. Yeah.
you come back again. So it's this fear of death that we kind of struggle with. The divine feminine midwives you into life, and she midwives you into
Yeah.
death.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've started contemplating really the concept of singularity. And what I mean by that is, I guess, the center point of the body, the mind, and the soul are completely coherent and integrated. And whilst we know a lot about the body and the mind, the soul we've sort of been educated away from. We've sort of educated away from true, spiritual expression. We've had to sort of buy into these religions. And I think what I'm thinking of is now in terms of the physical body and the soul merging. And you might be, because so far there haven't been many species that have been immortal, right? We don't really know of those. But longer life cycles we've seen in animals, for instance, they can be a lot longer than the typical sort of human lifespan. So whatever that's going to play out to be, we're not sure. Except at the moment, we can sort of see that our lives have been kept short or shorter than they could be through toxifying all of the human operating systems. And I think that part's falling away. We'll probably see an upsurge in longevity that's possible, particularly if we start cleaning up our water systems and nature, and then we'll see where the rest ends up. But the fascinating bit about the soul is now that through AI, we can actually learn about that. Still at sort of an archetypal level, but the more doing these soul readings based on people's date of birth. And the more I've sort of practiced that with individuals, they actually really remember stuff from previous lives. And then some, you can just tell when a person is an old soul, that it's really embodied throughout their physical sort of presence, that they embody wisdom at a much deeper level than what sort of the intellect has. That's quite an interesting field that we're playing with.
And so we also are growing a new generation. Those of us that are awakening, we're growing a new generation to be awake. So I
Yeah,
very purposefully, when I became awake in 2019, before that, I mean, I was in many ways, my husband used to shout at me. My husband was very atheist as well, but my kids would come to me and say, "What happens after we die?" And I'd have to say, "Oh." I don't know, but I think we become energy. I tried not to say, oh, you just die and you die, because that's what I believed. And then in 2019, when I had this epiphany that, oh, we don't just die, I started telling them, guys, it's okay. You continue. God and the goddess is real. It's okay. And so
Yeah.
my kids are very open. My daughter's extremely spiritual, like I am, very spiritual, and she has, she does. She's got a little altar, and she burns candles, and it's all good magic. I've said to her, we're green witches. My mom, despite the fact that I grew up quite atheist, my mom was a witch growing up. She was a herbalist, and we lived in on a mountain on North Hill, Angelique. Um, we were the first house in our neighborhood. And when we were kids, there were still baboon troops and there were leopards. So it was really wild. And my mom was a lay herbalist, and she used to do herbal medicine for most of the domestic workers and gardeners in the area because they couldn't afford to go to doctors. And she just became known as the white sangoma in the area. And so I grew up with this. And when I was a very sickly little girl, which is actually why she got into the herbs. And so when I got sick, I'd get mullein and marshmallow root, and I'd get garlic. Oh, horrible! Garlic water flushes in my sinuses and stuff. Um, and it helped me. It got me back to school, and it got me breathing again. I was always asthmatic and sicky. So I grew up with that, but then I kind of cast it off. But now that I've come back into it, I'm teaching my children about consciousness. And my son, he's not really as open to it yet, but he's having these insane experiences. Both of my children, all of us see craft. We see things in the sky, UFOs, and my husband has started seeing them when he's with us. My kids see insane amounts of them, and my son has now started having contact experiences, which is scary to me. Well, I don't know if he started having them, but he started remembering, and it's scary to me. We're being in. It is. We talk about exciting, but also for me, I'm a mummy. I don't want to think that my 14-year-old boy is up on a ship somewhere having things done to him. But he's not scared at all. And that's the fascinating thing. He woke up the other day, he not woke up, he turned to look outside the window and saw a 2.5-meter being at the window. And this being had a solid head and shoulders, but big. And it had a mask on, and the mask was made of static. And from the shoulders, it just merged into a cloak of shadow. He said a cloak of liquid shadow. And a huge hand with with that missing, so just the three fingers and the thumb, long fingers. And he was outside levitating. He remembers little flashes of things. I was outside levitating, and they were pulling me up these rings. And I said to him, and things like, and these are things he doesn't look at the UFO stuff. He doesn't. It's not an obsession for him at all. He's a normal little boy who does little boy things most of the time. And but the things that he was saying, he was talking about physics. He was saying went up into this pyramid, and it was like a black hole bending light at the top. And what these people do, he says, they're just people. I said, are you scared of me? He goes, no, I'm not scared of that guy. They're just people. And their purpose is to mend cuts in space. He says there are bad wormholes, and they mend them, and cuts in space. So the next generation already has the opportunity, and we don't use fluoride. We've been filtering our water not because I wanted to protect my third eye, but because I wanted to protect myself from chemicals. So he's never had tap water. He's always had filtered water. We don't use fluoride toothpaste. So we now have a generation of kids that are going to be able to be telepathic much quicker than us.
Yeah.
They open their minds to all of these things much faster than we do.
Yeah.
It's speeding up. We talk about the singularity. This is what's coming, and these kids are incredible.
Yeah, you can really observe that they're all around. They're birthed in a completely new era. Everything that took us decades to, I guess, learn and get our heads around is just here now for them, and they're growing up with a completely higher level of consciousness. Um, and so one of our projects is to upgrade the worldwide sort of education system, and then looking at completely redesigning it from scratch. using the latest levels of technology, which sort of includes a little bit of AI, but mainly animation, and also it's rooted in spirituality. So much more around the aspects of human design and astrology, numerology, and merging all these things together with, because we don't really know what we're educating kids for. We're going to have robots in a couple of years. We don't really need certain, work is going to be a thing of the past.
We took that one step further. So we homeschool our kids in a tutor group. We took them out of school during after COVID because we could see how psychotic the schooling system was. And so we homeschool them in a tutor group. And every Thursday for a year, I have this incredible friend, Amanda Gifford. She's a family constellations therapist, but she's just like, I think, my spiritual midwife, because since I came awake, she's really helping me to understand the thing. I thought I was going crazy. And then she'd say, no, no, this is what's happening. Anyway, so I asked her to come and teach the children on a Thursday, because Thursdays we did social stuff. I was teaching them basic kinesiology. I was teaching them emotional regulation, brain gym stuff. And she was teaching them once a month, she was teaching them a bit of quantum physics, remote viewing, how to become telepathic.
Yeah.
The first time we did remote viewing with those kids, I could not believe how accurate. I went into the other room and I drew a pineapple. And I came back and the kids had drawn palm trees and one child had drawn a pineapple.
Wow. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So these are all sort of homeschoolers as well. So I love homeschoolers because they're often the quirky little eccentrics that don't really fit in at school, or their parents are quirky eccentrics. So you've already got a group of children that are not in the box. They're out the box already. We had three kids with autism. And for me, I get excited around kids with autism, especially now that I know Kai Dickens is telling us that these kids are telepathic. But for me, autistic children, there are so many of them. Why are there so many of them? They're here because they're here to do something. And I think those kids are the most spiritual of all. They have so few filters, and they don't suffer fools. They say no.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's very true. Wow. Really, really great conversation. I loved it so much. Um, is there any closing notes from anybody? You took us through the goddesses and all the way to the extraterrestrial and UFO stuff. It's really been such a mixture of things. It's been lovely. So, I don't know if there's any like closing notes for you, Bronwyn, for you, Michael.
Just to say, no, you go, Bronwyn.
I just think we're in such an exciting time. I mean, I call it scary. It's only scary if you don't know what's going on, and it's also only scary if you watch the news. But if you come into your heart and your solar plexus, for me it's heart and solar plexus. Solar plexus, the way I understand it, is the highest material chakra. So it's root, sacrum, solar plexus, and this is our material body. And then the bridge to that is heart. So if you keep a hand on solar plexus and a hand on heart as much as you can, and you can swap those hands around, whichever feels good for you. When you're struggling to understand or you're being overwhelmed, you do one hand just below the ribs, one hand on the heart, and you breathe and you swap those around. You're going to be bridging from carbon body into heart space, and you'll be okay.
That's important. Thank you.
I think that's a beautiful way, to wrap it up. Like you're so right, and it's to get into our hearts is really what we started with the feminine rising. We've been sort of bypassed at the mental level. Like everything has been sort of organized around the brain, but the more you do that, the more you lose, I guess, the connection. So the coherence between head and heart is critical, and particularly the embodiment of the feminine sort of energy, um, and really sort of connecting with that. And I think that really is what we're talking about. And I think to your last point about we're labeling kids with conditions that are actually magical, but that's the old world doing that. So the more we should stop giving that energy in a way. Like it's like kids that are born and are they resist school for a reason, and that's because they're already advanced beyond school. And I'm almost celebrating, I'm almost laughing at what are all these people going to do that are holding on for dear life to these old structures, because it's they're yeah, everybody is sort of self-exposing where they are, and we can just no longer explain some of these things that we've created, these structures, because they just don't work anymore. And everything that's now starting to work is the divine feminine rising. It's kids that are sort of more connected. Telepathy, what you were talking about. It's particularly younger people that have that capacity, and some older ones. Like I'm here in this region where I am, there's quite a lot of older psychics that have cultivated the abilities. Um, but then they might not be psychic in some other areas, like they might still be doing tax returns, for argument's sake. Whereas the generation that's now coming through, the younger kids, they're never going to fit into that old system. Why would they? They don't have to. And I think that's the beauty of the time that we live in. We're witnessing this great awareness rising. So thanks so much for joining us, Bronwyn. It's been lovely to meet you and to hear your journey and your perspectives. And yeah, we'll keep doing these things, making these things more aware for people and growing clarity.
Yeah, it
Thank you
was a
so much,
pleasure.
guys. Thank you, Angelique. It's been a pleasure to have known you, to meet you. I hope we hang out again some more.
Yes, definitely. I will arrange it soon. I look forward to it.
I'd love to come back for another chat sometime. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Brian. Um, Sorry, is there anywhere where we can buy the decks and
Oh,
the
yeah,
things?
yeah. So, Elemental Goddess Oracle is the deck, and you can buy it on all the major booksellers. So it's on Amazon, Simon and Schuster, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. It's on the Inner Traditions and site as well. And it's
Mhm.
if you're in South Africa, it's in all the exclusive books and Esteral books as well.
All right. And if someone
Fantastic.
wanted to contact you, how would they get a hold of you?
Uh, so you can find me on Instagram under Bronwyn E. Millar. That's Bronwyn with a Y and Miller with an A. Bronwyn E. Millar, author. And I'm on Insta and I post some of my psychic stuff as well. So I post sometimes in the bath when I'm scrying because that's when I do my rituals. And I speak a little bit about all my rituals and how to trigger your own psychic experiences. I'm not psychic necessarily for other people. I want to teach everybody to become psychic for themselves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Great.
beautiful. Thank you. Well, we make sure we get your data and put it in the show notes below when we post
Yes.
this. But yeah, thanks so much for today, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah.
Thank
It was,
you.
it was amazing, Brian. Thank you.